When you look at a world map of time zones, have you ever just stopped and thought, wow, that looks really messy? We like to think of time as this constant, right? Governed by the sun, the spin of the earth, pure physics. But what if I told you that the time on your clock has just as much to do with politics, power, and national identity as it does with the cosmos?
So just look at this. On the left, we've got the ideal. 24 perfect, clean slices of the globe. One for each hour. It's logical, it makes sense. But then you look at the right. That's the world we actually live in. It is a jagged, confusing puzzle of lines that zig and zag and seem to completely ignore longitude. So what on earth happened between the clean theory and this messy reality?
In this quote right here, it gets to the absolute heart of it. The lines on our time maps, well, they weren't just drawn by scientists. They were drawn by politicians, by economists, by revolutionaries. They're basically invisible borders that tell these incredible stories of history, compromise, and sometimes just pure defiance. Let's start peeling back some of those layers.
Okay, so before we can understand all the weird zigs and zags, we have to understand the ruler that everyone agrees to use, and that is UTC, or Coordinated Universal Time. And as you're about to see, even this global standard is one heck of a fascinating compromise.
So what is UTC? Well, think of it as the official starting line for all timekeeping on the planet. It's the modern-day version of Greenwich Mean Time. Now, it isn't technically a time zone itself, but it's the standard that all the other time zones are measured against. Like UTC plus 2 hours, or UTC minus 5. Now, at the very core of UTC, there's a fundamental conflict. On one side, you've got atomic time, or TAI. This thing is ridiculously accurate, based on the flawless, perfect rhythm of atoms inside hundreds of clocks around the world. But on the other side, you've got Earth time, or UT1, and that's based on the actual rotation of our planet, which, it turns out, is a little bit wobbly, and it's even gradually slowing down. So one clock is perfect, and the other one is real. So how in the world do you sync up a perfect clock with a slightly imperfect planet? The solution is actually kind of beautiful and simple. The leap second. Every so often, scientists just add 1 extra second to UTC. It's this tiny little adjustment that keeps our super precise atomic clocks from slowly drifting away from the sun, making sure that when your watch says noon, it actually feels like noon outside.
All right, so now that we've got the baseline, let's see what happens when countries start to move away from that global standard. Because this is where time zones stop being about science and start becoming a canvas for countries to paint their own identity.
Let's start with India. This is a country that's easily wide enough to cover 2 theoretical time zones, but it only uses one, Indian Standard Time, which is UTC plus 5.5 hours. That half-hour offset was a post-colonial decision, a way to foster national unity, but it has some pretty wild consequences. In the northeast of the country, the sun can be up as early as 4 a.m., but government offices won't open for another 6 hours. So to deal with it, some industries like the big tea plantations, they just use their own unofficial tea garden time, which is a full hour ahead of the rest of the country. Now get this, let's look right next door to India, at Nepal. You'd think, okay, maybe they share India's time, or maybe they're a clean hour off. Nope. Nepal is set at UTC plus 5 hours and 45 minutes, a 15-minute difference. I mean, why would any country do that?
It is geopolitics you can literally set your watch to. That quirky 15-minute offset is a quiet but constant declaration of independence. Every single time someone crosses that border, they have to physically change their watch. It's a small little thing, but it reinforces over and over again that Nepal is distinct from the massive giant to its south. Its national identity measured in quarter hours.
So time isn't just about identity. It can also be a raw, unfiltered tool of power and economic common sense. This is where we see countries that don't just nudge the clock. They completely bend it to their will.
Okay, let's talk about China. Geographically, this country is just enormous. It stretches across 5 ideal time zones. To put that in perspective, that's as wide as the continental United States. So logically, it should have at least 5 different times, right?
Yeah, wrong. China has exactly one, a single official time zone for the entire country, Beijing time. After 1949, the government unified all clocks as a powerful symbol of centralized control and political unity.
And this decision has a dramatic, real-world effect. If you're in the far western province of Xinjiang, the sun might not even rise until after 10 o'clock in the morning.
This huge difference between the clock and the sun is a daily physical reminder of where political power is centered. To cope, a lot of locals there unofficially use a second time zone. They call it a Rumpke time, which is 2 hours behind the official clock.
Now let's look at a completely different kind of power: economic pragmatism. For years, the island nation of Samoa was on the American side of the international dateline, making it one of the last places on Earth to see the sunset. But its main trading partners shifted over time to Australia and New Zealand, and this created a logistical nightmare. When it was Friday in Samoa, it was already Saturday in Sydney. They were effectively losing 2 full business days every single week.
So Samoa's solution was absolutely radical. They decided to time travel. At midnight on Thursday, December 29, 2011, the entire country just skipped Friday. They jumped directly to Saturday, December 31st. They literally erased a day from their calendar just to get their work week back in sync with their economic partners. Incredible.
So what does all this tell us? All these strange half-hour zones, these 15-minute quirks, these completely skipped days, what are we really looking at? Well, we're starting to see that the world clock is basically a hidden transcript of human history and our biggest priorities.
When you really boil it all down, nations use time as a tool. For a country like China, it's a tool of centralized power. For Nepal, it's a tool of national identity. And for Samoa, it was simply a tool for profit. You know, these 3 motivations: power, identity, and profit. They explain almost every single strange line you see on that messy time zone map.
And believe it or not, it can get even more complex. Just take a look at Australia during their summer. Because daylight saving time is decided state by state, the entire continent fractures into 5 different time zones. You've got these weird 30 and 60-minute offsets between neighboring states. It's a total patchwork quilt of local decisions. And that brings us right back to where we started, that huge difference between the neat, clean ideal and the messy, complicated reality. And now we know why. The map of time isn't really a map of the sun's position. It's a political map, reflecting our needs, our ambitions, and our entire history, all just layered on top of the simple spin of the Earth.
So the next time you check the time in another country, just remember what you're really looking at. It's not just a number. It's a story. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. If the borders on our clocks are this fluid, drawn and redrawn for purely human reasons, what other maps that we think are totally fixed are actually just waiting to be rewritten?